18 banners, a billion-dollar payroll. And now, a roster that looks more like a rebuild than a dynasty. What on earth happened to the Boston Celtics? How do you go from the mountaintop to the basement in just 1 year?
But they had to
Let's break this mess wide open. The story of the Boston Celtics right now is the basketball version of a Greek tragedy. Just a year ago, they weren't just champions, they were kings. Their 18th title put them ahead of the Lakers. Finally breaking that endless tug-of-war for supremacy, fans poured into Causeway Street like it was the 1980s all over again. The team that had stumbled in 5 of their last 7 trips to the Eastern Conference Finals finally got over the hump. The confetti fell, the duck boats rolled, and Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown stood tall as the faces of Boston's new era. The front office knew what it took to keep the dream alive. Money. Lots of it. The Celtics had the 4th highest payroll in the entire league, nearly $200 million, and that didn't even include the brutal luxury tax payments that made ownership wince every time Adam Silver smiled their way. But nobody cared. Not when you're holding the Larry O'Brien trophy. Brad Stevens doubled down. Drew Holiday got a 4-year, $135 million deal. Derek White signed for 4 years and $125 million. And then came the monster contract, Jayson Tatum's 5-year, $315 million extension. The Celtics weren't just betting on their stars. They were betting the entire franchise, but that's where the fairy tale ends. While Boston's foundation was crumbling, rivals were sharpening their swords. The Knicks doubled down on toughness with OG Anunoby's extension. The Cavs finally looked like a balanced squad with Donovan Mitchell committed long-term, and the Magic's young core of Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner took another leap. Even the Pistons, yes, the Pistons, added real depth with Cade Cunningham healthy and Ausar Thompson blossoming. The East was moving forward while Boston was stuck in neutral, and the gap only grew wider. The 2025 season was supposed to be the repeat tour. Instead, it became the nightmare that fans didn't see coming. It all unraveled in the playoffs against the Knicks, when Jayson Tatum tore his Achilles. One slip, one collapse on the floor, and everything Boston had built around suddenly crumbled. He's gone for the entire 2025-26 season. That's not just a star missing. That's the heart, soul, and engine of the franchise ripped out. Inside the locker room, players described the silence as haunting. Teammates knew immediately what the injury meant. Seasons don't just survive without Jayson Tatum. Fans outside Madison Square Garden were in tears, understanding in real time that the dream of back-to-back titles had died on that hardwood. Boston's championship parade in 2024 now felt like a memory from another lifetime, and the hits kept coming. Kristaps Porzingis, the player who was supposed to be the unicorn stretch big to space the floor, couldn't stay healthy again. By the time the playoffs rolled around, he was gone too. The Celtics were suddenly trying to win games with duct tape, good intentions, and the faint memory of what this roster used to be. And then there's Drew Holiday, a defensive wizard, no doubt, but Father Time doesn't care about your resume. His decline was obvious. His shot wasn't falling, his lateral quickness faded, and the Celtics front office had to face a brutal truth. They were paying star money for role player results. The new collective bargaining agreement made it even worse. For years, the Celtics were happy to overspend. As long as they were contenders, the money felt justified. But the NBA's new second apron rules came with a guillotine of penalties, loss of flexibility, loss of roster-building tools, even future pick restrictions. And with Tatum sidelined, Boston made a cold calculation. This isn't worth it, so the fire sale began. Kristaps Porzingis was shipped to Atlanta in what can only be called a salary dump. The return, George Niang, and a second-rounder. Let that sink in. 1 year ago, Porzingis was hyped as the missing piece. Now, Boston practically begged someone to take him. Drew Holiday? Gone too. Dealt to Portland for Anthony Simons. And here's the twist. Boston doesn't even want Simons long-term. That's how desperate they were to shed salary. They gave up a two-way veteran leader just to reset the books. And then there's Al Horford, the steady hand, the glue guy, the veteran leader who anchored this defense for years. He wasn't re-signed, just like that, gone. What's left? The 2025-26 projected roster is almost unrecognizable. Jaylen Brown is still there, of course, carrying the weight of being the lone all-star. Derek White, the do-it-all guard who might now be their most reliable piece. Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser are still around, but they were supposed to be supporting cast members, not pillars of the franchise. The front court, brace yourself. Xavier Tillman, Nimias Keita, Georges Niang, Luka Garza. Analysts are already calling it the worst front court rotation in the entire league. When you're relying on Niang to bang with Joel Embiid or Giannis, you're not just in trouble, you're finished. Defense, once the Celtics' calling card, is now paper thin. In 2024, they had size, switchability, and rim protection that smothered opponents. Now, without Horford and Porzingis, opponents are living in the paint. Analysts predict Boston could fall from a top 3 defensive rating to the bottom third of the league. That's not a slide, that's a collapse. So here's the real question. Where do the Celtics stand in the East now? Let's be honest, they're cooked. The Cavs, the Knicks, the Magic, the Hawks, even the Pistons, yes, the Detroit Pistons, are all seen as better positioned right now. If the Sixers can just get healthy, they're clearly ahead too. The Bucks, Heat, Raptors, and Bulls, you could make the case for all of them being better than this broken-down version of Boston. That leaves the Celtics staring up at almost the entire conference. Realistically, they're probably only better than the Hornets, the Nets, and the Wizards. That's bottom 4 in the East. Imagine saying that last June when Tatum and Brown were spraying champagne in the locker room. It's almost unthinkable. But here's the kicker. This collapse isn't just about one season. This is about Boston's future. They're essentially punting 2025-26, calling it a gap year, waiting for Tatum to return in 2026-27. But that's risky business. Achilles injuries aren't sprained ankles. They change careers. They end careers. Kevin Durant made a successful comeback, but he's the exception, not the rule. There's no guarantee Tatum comes back as the same player, or even close. And then there's the 2-timeline problem. The Celtics have older veterans like Derek White and Jaylen Brown in their prime right now. But they're young players. They're not developing fast enough. By the time the kids are ready, the vets may be past their peak. That's how dynasties die. Not with a bang, but with a slow, awkward fade. Boston fans aren't exactly patient, and the backlash has already begun. Season ticket renewals have dipped. TV ratings are down, and local radio is calling the front office the new Danny Ainge, but without the assets. Sports writers who once praised Brad Stevens for building a champion are now questioning if he mortgaged the future for one banner. The mood in Boston has turned from celebration to suspicion almost overnight. Rumors swirled all summer about Jaylen Brown possibly being traded to Utah. That deal fell through, but you can bet those whispers will be back. Because if this season goes as badly as people expect, Boston might finally be forced to blow it all up. The one lifeline? The 2026 draft. The Celtics own their first-round pick, and scouts are already calling it a stacked class. If Boston can bottom out, land a top prospect, and pair him with a hopefully healthy Tatum in 2026-27, maybe, just maybe, this nightmare only lasts 1 year. But banking on ping-pong balls and Achilles recoveries, that's a gamble even Vegas wouldn't touch. So, what are the Celtics doing? That's the million-dollar question. On the surface, they're cutting costs, resetting the books, and buying time until Tatum returns. But look deeper, and it feels like a team that's lost its identity. From the best roster in basketball to one of the weakest in the span of 12 months, it's not just a fall, it's a free fall. Fans in Boston are asking, how did it all slip away so fast? Was it bad luck, bad timing, or bad planning? The truth is, it's all of the above. And unless something changes dramatically, the 18th banner might be the last one this core ever raises. So, here we are. The Celtics went from champions to question marks in the blink of an eye. Do you think Boston can bounce back when Tatum returns, or is this the end of their dynasty dreams? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.